In the last lesson, we optimized our static meshes for path tracing and we adjusted the relative error of these assets so that they can also give us some really high quality in path tracing as well. In this video, we're going to optimize our lighting for path tracing. So let's begin. Now, whenever you light up your scene using Lumen, whether it is the Unreal Engine's default lighting setup, which is these environment lights that we have in here, or it is the lighting setup with the help of the HDRIs like we have one in our scene for the night shot, whatever the lighting setup is, if you have set all those parameters for Lumen, those parameters are not necessarily going to work for path tracing as well. That is because, as I said in one of the previous videos, path tracing gives us some very accurate bounce lighting and very accurate global illumination and reflection system, whereas Lumen has its own algorithm that it follows to give us this real-time global illumination. So because they both follow different algorithms, that is why the lighting setup that we have for Lumen isn't necessarily going to work for path tracing as well. Okay. Now to demonstrate this, I'm going to split this window into two. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to have the lit mode. Let me just open the camera view as well. I'm going to open the level sequence and maybe move just about there, somewhere around here, let's say. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to open path tracing. Okay. And let me select the post-process volume. Where is it? I'm going to open up this folder. Let's scroll down to post-process volume. Okay, I'm going to now open up the camera preview in here as well. And let's set the maximum bounces to 6. One was just for the demonstration. And let me just move this window somewhere around here. And I'm going to move this window just about there so that we can have the side-by-side comparison. Okay, let's give it some time to clear up the noise. Okay, so in here we have this side-by-side comparison. On the left-hand side, we have Lumen, which is the Unreal Engine's default global illumination and reflection system. And on the right-hand side, we have path tracing, which gives us accurate bounce lighting. The only difference is the global illumination system. Okay, so now for the most part, there's not much of a difference between these two shots. If we put some very miniature-looking differences aside, you can see that both of these shots look pretty good at the moment. The only major difference I see in here is the exponential height fog. You can see that on the left-hand side, we have this bluish sort of fog in here and it looks a little bit thicker. Whereas on the right-hand side, I don't see that much haze or mist in the scene with path tracing. And for the most part, I think that is the only major difference in here. This also indicates that Lumen is doing an amazing job in here because the difference between the accurate bounce lighting and Lumen is not that much. Okay. Of course, there are some miniature differences. For example, you can see that on the front part of this character, we have this whitish sort of, reflection of this weapon or of the arm. I'm not sure which one, but we have this very good looking reflection on the front part of this character in here. Whereas on the left hand side, we can see that we don't have that much whitish sort of reflection. Same is the case in here as well. If you look at his face, you can see that on the right hand side with path tracing, we have this whitish sort of reflection pretty close to his eye. But on the left hand side with Lumen, you can see we don't have anything in here. Similarly, if I move maybe, let's say somewhere around here, for example, and let's give it some time to clean up the noise because there is another difference that I want to show in here. Okay, so on the right hand side with path tracing, you can see we have this very good looking sharp shadow in here, this darkest sort of shadow on his shoulder. But on the left hand side with Lumen, you can see the shadow looks pretty diffused. It doesn't look of very high quality. The resolution looks a little bit odd as well. And we don't have much of a quality in here with these shadows. Okay. Of course, these are not the only differences in here. There could be several other miniature differences. But the point in here is that path tracing is what gives us some very good looking reflections, very good looking accurate bounce lighting and accurate global illumination. Whereas on the other hand, Lumen is also doing a very good job in here because there is not much of a difference. But still, if you're looking for something very cinematic, very, film-like visuals for your shot, path tracing is the way to go. So I was talking about these differences, and in here on the left-hand side, as I mentioned beforehand, you can see that we have this very good-looking, very thickish sort of fog on the left-hand side with Lumen. But whereas on the right-hand side, you can see the fog is there, but it is not very dense at the moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do in here is to go ahead and select the exponential height fog and simply increase the fog a little. I'm going to just move this thing here and let's select the exponential height fog And let me just bring it somewhere around here. And let's give it some time to clean up the noise so that I can have a little bit of idea how much I want to increase the density. Okay, so I think it has cleaned up enough noise. So let's increase this number to, I think maybe let's say 0.03 will look good. Yeah, I think 0.03 looks good. Of course, it's a little bit too much for Lumen, but for path tracing, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so this is how you can optimize your lighting for path tracing. Whenever you light up your scene using Lumen, and then when you switch to path tracing mode, you're going to see some sort of difference. That could be with the intensity of exposure, that could be with the intensity of directional light, that could be exponential height fog, the skylight, the HDRI, that could be anything. Then depending on the scene, you're going to have to make all those adjustments and then decide for yourself how you can make the best out of it. Okay. So one more thing that I like to mention in here is that let me just come out of this one and enlarge this window, switch to lit mode. And one more thing that I like to mention in here is that if I hide my night scene and enable my environment lights over the day scene and, go into the post process volume settings and scroll down to path tracing settings. Okay. And check this box for reference atmosphere. Let me switch to path tracing mode. You can see that right now I don't have anything below the horizon. But if I check this box, you can see that now we no longer have that empty looking atmosphere below the horizon. But the problem in here is that you can see we don't have any sort of volumetric clouds in the sky. Okay. But if I uncheck this box, you can now see that we have these volumetric clouds in here with path tracing. So if you want some sort of clouds in the sky, you're going to have to disable the reference atmosphere. And I don't think you should worry too much about this empty area below the horizon because that is not going to be visible from the camera. If I split this window and in here, let me switch to path tracing mode, you're going to see that it is not visible at all. Okay. So if you want some volumetric cloud in your scene, you're going to have to uncheck reference atmosphere. And one more thing that I like to mention in here is that you can see these jagged edges of these clouds in here. And I have this very weird looking edge line in here as well. And to be honest, the quality of these clouds doesn't look so good. Okay. So for this, what you can do is you can increase the resolution of these clouds. For that, you can go into the skylight and let me scroll up. And coming here, you can see that the cube map resolution that we have in here is pretty low. It is 128. So if I increase this to 512, you can see that all of a sudden we have these really good looking clouds in here. And if you want to increase a little bit more resolution, you can simply type in 1024 as well. But just make sure you don't overkill this number, okay? And as you can see, we have these really high quality looking clouds in the sky. Okay, so one final thing that I like to mention in here before I end today's lesson is that if I go into my night scene, let me disable the environment lights and enable the night scene. If I select my HDRI backdrop in here, and let me bring this thing up, and in here inside this HDRI backdrop, you can see that we have this skylight as well. But we also have a skylight outside of this HDRI backdrop. So now we have two ambient lights in the scene, which is not the way it should be. So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just select the HDRI backdrop, select the skylight, and check this box. Okay, effects hold. It is going to just simply disable the skylight. But keep in mind that this setting is only for path tracing, not for Lumen. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today's lesson, and I'll see you guys in the next one.